with SOC. I hope and pray that you are doing well. Thank you again for joining us on Real Reviews. Today is the season finale of season 4 of Real Reviews. Today we're going to be reviewing a interesting film. As you can tell from the thumbnail, we're going to be talking about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a 2022 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics character Black Panther. It is the 30th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, directed by Ryan Coogler. The people of Wakanda fight to protect their home from intervening world powers as they mourn the death of King T'Challa. Queen Ramonda, Shuri, M'Baku, Okoye, and the Dora Milaje fight to protect the kingdom from Wakanda from intervening world powers. At the dawn of King T'Challa's death, invading forces from around the world target Wakanda's vibranium, unleashing chaos, and it will be the duty of Shuri, M'Baku, Nakia, and Okoye to defend the nation, especially when a mysterious Mexican civilization emerges from the depths of the sea. As the Wakandans strive to embrace their next chapter, the heroes must band together and forge a new path for their nation. So, as you see, we are going to be talking about Wakanda Forever, but as you know, I am not going to be doing this alone. Now, if this is your first time here, I want to welcome you to Real Reviews, where we examine film through a Christian lens, looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly in film and media. So, let me introduce to you my panel. What's going on, everybody? Wakanda Forever! What's going on? How are you guys doing?
Chilling.
Man, everybody's cool now. Everybody's
Doing
quiet.
good, doing good. Happy to be here. Happy to be here. I know I'm the special guest today
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Apologist in Detroit. Where can people find you?
in Detroit.
Oh,
Oh my goodness, it's gonna be with that kind of stream.
You can email me at apologistindetroit@gmail.com. I have a blog that I haven't posted on in a year, but I have a couple things in work. So Lord willing, soon I'll be dropping some stuff there. In these YouTube streets, guest appearing on other people's channels because I don't curate much on my own. And yeah, that's basically where you can find me.
Awesome. Alfredo, what's going on, bro? Where can people find you? What are you up to?
you can find me on these YouTube streets as BK Apologist. I'm doing a video with my guy MJ Jackson this Wednesday. We'll be discussing um, what we'll be discussing. Um,
Somebody with a big head, I think.
yes, we're going to be talking about Yakub, the big head scientist, the theosophical origins of Yakub, the big head scientist.
Okay. Cool. Michelle Turner, what's going on, sis? How are you doing?
I'm allowed to talk now. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, I'm doing pretty good.
Okay, Nate, how are you doing today?
I am doing okay. Just happy to be here.
So you surfaced. Everybody seems very excited.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and just delve right into Wakanda Forever. So let's begin with Nate. Give me your overall thoughts of the film before we get into the details. What did you think of the film? Did you enjoy it? And generally, what did you think of it overall?
I did enjoy the film. I wouldn't say it was a perfect film. Um, it, I think the parts of the film that I really liked, I was telling BK this yesterday. It was more the character moments. I think there's a lot of action sequences that are pretty good, but it's also like we've had more than 20 MCU films. Those are also sort of like standard fare. So it's kind of like it's good, it's fun. But at the same time, I found myself sort of realizing I wasn't necessarily as involved or resonated with those moments. But when we were dealing with like Shuri or her mother dealing with childless death and things like that, that's when I was really getting into it. And I feel like this is probably the strongest or one of the strongest MCU film in
Mhm.
Phase 4. Maybe not necessarily. I probably in terms of enjoyment is probably No Way Home was the one I enjoyed the most upon initial viewing. But I feel like this may be the one that has more watchable value. there were actually moments where I was holding back tears, especially at the end. So it was a moving film. I think it could have been maybe refined in parts, but overall, I was pretty satisfied with where they
Cool,
went
cool.
with it.
Thank you. Michelle, overall thoughts of the film. What did you think of it?
I love the movie. I think it was written very well. I think it was a beautiful film. It was very touching. You can tell when the people were crying. What are they doing? When the people were crying, like they were crying for Chadwick and not necessarily T'Challa. So
Mhm.
the emotions of it was very heightened. It was a very really well acted film as well. Like there's some people I think should win Oscars based off of their performances in that movie.
Cool, cool. Thank you. Alfredo, overall thoughts, man.
Yeah, very very well done. It's probably the most serious Marvel film they've made thus far. Very somber. Um, it's a very different Marvel movie, and which is good, but also makes it hard to compare it to the other Phase Four movies because it's vastly, in a lot of ways, it's vastly different than what we've come to see in a Marvel film, and that's a good thing. So.
Cool, cool. Thank you. Chris, what were your overall thoughts of the film, bro?
I thought it was brilliant. Like I felt like it was an impossible. It was a virtually. It seemed like a seemingly virtually impossible task to make a Black Panther movie without the Black Panther, or at least the Black Panther that we had that had come to resonate with so many people, and T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa, and I thought that Coogler told a great story, introduced some new characters, had a compelling. Some the acting performances were just outstanding. I mean, just so many of them that were just like, wow, this felt like very real. And while there's probably no such thing as a perfect film,
Mhm.
and this certainly wasn't a perfect film. I thought that against all odds, this film did a pretty solid job of telling a story that you cared about with characters that you cared about, and while not making you forget about the main character
Mhm.
T'Challa that we all had come to love, but certainly making him feel slightly less missed in a film that was designed to make you miss him. So
Right.
yeah, I thought it was a really really good adaptation of a couple of good comic storylines, and the scripting was pretty solid. The only thing that I didn't really care for is I thought that there was one particular character that in the movie that they were introducing that felt out of place to me,
Mhm.
and it wasn't the acting. The acting was good. Dominique Thorne did a really good job of playing Riri Williams. It just felt out of place and odd
Mhm.
in a film that's about a society that is the most technologically advanced, and here you are, a person, you got a dumpster diver up here building something instead. It just didn't make sense to me.
Right.
And then the mask on the suit looked kind of weird, and it's like, I don't know about this. So anyway, I felt like that was out of place, but otherwise, man, Namor, wow. I enjoyed this film.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. For me, I thought it was a great film. It wasn't perfect by any means. I mean, there are things that we can pick apart. There were some plot holes, but I kind of am on the same track with Chris in that they had a lot to overcome. They had the death. They had to deal with the death of their main actor, who played the main character that was beloved by everyone in the part, and then to have him unfortunately pass away in real life, having to kind of reestablish a story, rewrite, and to bring something to fruition with this kind of quality was actually very, very impressive. Part of me really would wish to see like what was the original script with him in it, like what direction would they have went with Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. What would the original story look like as opposed to what we got? And by all intents and purposes, it was a great story. So let's go ahead. Let's just jump into some characters. I know who I want to talk about, but You know, Nate, who was a standout character for you in the film? And tell me, who was the one character that every time they appeared on screen for you, you were like captured?
Ooh, I mean, I think Namor was definitely. I'd never seen this actor before, and you can correct me or let me know. Was it? Did they say that he was being introduced in this film? I thought I wasn't sure that was his credit at the end. But he was excellent. I had no idea who he was, but he was, and I don't know anything about this character.
Well,
either,
the actor's been in other things. I haven't
really
seen it. Like he was in Narcos. I never watched Narcos. He was in another film as well, but I didn't see it. This is my first time meeting Huerta, who played the role.
Okay, because there was somebody. They said somebody introducing somebody, so I can't remember if that was him or what. Yeah, I hadn't seen him before. But he was a lot of fun. But I think, the character probably that stick in my mind throughout the movie would just be I think Shuri, just because I think I really appreciated what they did with her arc, and I know a lot of people, or there's some people that weren't sure about how they feel about her taking on the mantle at the end, but I felt that really well. They dealt with her grief and just the responsibility of what she has to take on, that you can expect it, right? You would, I don't think you would have thought her to take on this role, especially after seeing the first film. But I think somehow in my mind they hit that arc out of in my opinion, and so that's kind of the standout character for me, because it's like that to be able to do that, to tell this story and really earned what they did, and for her to actually, the actress and the character, to take on to take that on and actually make it work, in my opinion, that really that sticks in my mind, and that really I think it really moves me. It's the aspect of the movie that I keep coming back to in my mind, and it's still the thing that makes me kind of tear up once in a while, just thinking about her whole
So
journey.
it was Shuri for you. Cool, man. Cool. Michelle, the character that stood out for you the most throughout the film, who was it?
M'Baku.
M'Baku. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Shocking.
Yep.
I am a little shocked.
You should not be shocked at all.
Okay.
M'Baku
So tell me why M'Baku? Why did he stand? Other than the fact that he is attractive to you, what else?
Oh, I mean, that's the only reason why. What else did you want from me? I mean, outside of M'Baku, it would probably be Angela Bassett. Like, she acted that part to a T. Like, she was amazing in her role. Like, from the beginning to the end, she did a great job. You felt her emotion. You felt how she felt in every single scene. Like, you seen her strength, and you seen how well she could lead on her own. Like, even though that's not something that she wanted to do, and that's not a role that she really was trying to step into, but when she stepped into it, she did a great job at stepping into it. And I feel she just did amazing. So outside of M'Baku, it'd probably be Queen Ramonda. She did an amazing job. So that stuck out to me the most. Her just, like, especially when she was talking to Okoye, she just, like, I felt that. That's probably one of my most favorite scenes in the movie. And then when she was fighting to go get Shuri back, that was probably another one of my favorite scenes. So I really appreciated that. And so M'Baku and Angela Bassett, but mostly M'Baku for obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons. So here's the thing. When you said Queen Ramonda, I remember, and Lane Boo, she said her UN outfit was amazing. I'm going to tell you one thing. That scene when she was in the UN, I was like, is she on steroids? Because she is fit. Like the way, I like the outfit the way it was, but the way the gold wrapped around her arm and the neck and it was really dope, that whole UN scene. And I think when that scene opened up, she established her dominance in the UN, but also as a powerful actress in that film because she commanded the audience. She commanded the attention. You felt her pain, the fact that she had to struggle with the fact that the Black Panther was gone and now everybody's trying to attack. And I love the way the Ryan Coogler did have that conversation in the UN scene while also simultaneously having the action sequence in the background and then joining it together when, the Dora Milaje walked in with the room with the French soldiers. And I thought that was pretty genius. So yeah, Ramonda killed it throughout the whole film. Alfredo, character stand out for you, bro?
Yeah, I mean, again, the Ramonda. I mean, the regalness,
Mm-hmm.
right, coupled with the fierceness, but also with the desperation. You know what I mean? Because she lost her son. She's on the verge of losing her daughter. Um, People want her to lose the nation, right? So she has all these wars and these multiple fronts that she has to fight, and the mama bear has her claws out,
Mm.
and it's one thing, right, to be upset and to be angry, but still retain your regalness while you're tight at the whole world
Mm.
is an amazing thing to do. You know what I mean? So yeah. So for me, it was definitely Queen Ramonda. Absolutely.
Awesome. Chris, you may have the same answer as me, but I'm interested. Who was your character standout in the film?
It was Tenoch Huerta. While Angela Bassett did a phenomenal job, and it wasn't easy to pick. I mean, because Angela Bassett did a phenomenal job.
Mm-hmm.
But Huerta really stood out to me, his dramatic chops. Like, you don't think of Marvel movies as dramas,
Mm-hmm.
and here's this guy with this very stoic tone. His reasoning, he just communicated so well, both physically, like when you're watching the camera, he comes up out of the water and he's like rubbing his hair back and he's like, the air is so fresh here.
Yeah.
I've heard of a place like this. And just like his entire presentation of Namor, who's a very complex character in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that for him to be adapting this character that not a lot of people are familiar with, who's a very complex character, but essential to this complexity is this fierceness about him. And I thought that he did just a phenomenal job of presenting himself as this visually, body language wise, as well as his tone of voice and the way that he communicated his motivation. So Huerta, edged out Angela Bassett just a bit for me.
Right. Awesome. So for me, I agree wholeheartedly with Chris. To me, Huerta was the standout performance for me. Every time he was on screen, he had my attention. Now, there are a couple of things and a couple of reasons why I really liked his performance. Number one, he wasn't jacked up as far as muscular like the other Marvel characters. And that's something I truly enjoyed because I was like, he was still able to convey power, presence, and all that without being, now I'm not saying he wasn't fit, but I'm just saying he wasn't like over the top muscular. His attitude, like what Chris was saying, was one of the first things I noticed when he comes out and he kind of pushes his hair back and he's looking. He seems like this is the first time he's ever seen Wakanda, right? And its glory. And just by the way he conveyed that the air is so fresh of people who never have to leave, he said, why would you share this with the world? And it seemed like he told so much story about his character without revealing anything about his character in that scene. And I truly enjoyed. Now, there are a bunch of other scenes that I really enjoyed. But so I'll start it off and then we'll kind of capture what was the best scene for everybody in the film. For me, in combination with the wonderful musical score by Ludwig, that score was amazing. But there was one scene that captured like my heart and my attention, and that was the scene when Namor was actually showing Shuri Talocan, and the music that played. And it's a Spanish song, and I forgot the name already because I was just listening to it today. but it was something about the wind, and basically it's the translation. But anyway, as he was showing her Talokan, and all, it was beautiful the way they kind of showed the people under the water. It was almost the civilization and peace, and it was this hidden beauty, this hidden gem, and that he was protecting. And in the sense, it would have been, to me, it would have been so dope to have him with uh, the Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman. I would have loved to see them interact with one another and actually have a conversation about what it means to protect your people, because I think it would have been so wonderfully acted by both those wonderful actors. But to me, one of the most beautiful scenes in the film, combined with the score, was when Namor was actually showing Talokan, and it was revealed to show the city, the glowing sun in the city. I just thought it was very, very ethereal in a sense. So, Alfredo, what one scene maybe captured your attention, something that stood out to you in the whole movie? What's maybe one scene or two, if you have it, that kind of captured your imagination?
Man, scene.
I mean, there's a lot of them, I know.
Well, I mean the introduction to Telokan,
Mm-hmm.
and they did a great job at unpacking the origin story. I think the scene when he's a little kid and he's
Yeah.
coming up to the surface world to bury his mom, and he sees the oppression of his people, and it might have been the first time he's ever seen that,
Right.
and now understanding his story of why they went down to the water in the first place, like to avoid the colonizers.
Mm-hmm.
But for him to I think that's his first time he sees the oppression. I think that scene was very powerful.
That's a very good scene to pick out. My wife, she liked that scene, but she. Now here's the thing: me and my wife are like elbowing each other throughout the film, because I was rooting for Namor, and Michelle was rooting for Wakanda, and so every time Namor was doing something dope, I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna win, we're gonna win," even though I knew how it was gonna go. But I was really rooting, and I think the film did a good job because, like you said, that scene that. Of him coming out of the water and seeing his people oppressed. Now, DFC Diatribe, he said, "Let's go," but he put something on here. Now, I didn't erase your comments. For some reason, sometimes when it goes live, it erases comments that are put on there previously, but I did copy and paste it. And I kind of want to get your thoughts, Alfredo, since this is your scene that you liked. DFC said, "Looking forward to the talk about how the priest in the movie was loving of the people enslaving Namor's family, but called him a child without love." And then he says, "False Christianity on full display." So what did you think about that scene where the priest called him son of the devil while his people were being oppressed? He was okay. Did you have any thoughts about that, Alfredo?
I mean, to that person's quote, I mean, yeah, it was definitely a false Christianity. It was colonization and the enslavement of people under the guise of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, thanks to our good brother, Mr. Phil Fox, and just taking such a deep dive in the doctrine of discovery
Mm-hmm.
and understanding the process of how they quote unquote discovered these lands, even though you had these indigenous people there, and how, well, as long as they're not quote unquote of Christ, they're not humans.
Right.
So you technically are discovering that land. And but I'm sure a lot of them actually believe in that theology. So when they saw Namor, it kind of messed up. Like, all right, he's definitely not human, but not in the way that we want him to not be human.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean? It's like this guy's gonna be a problem, And but to say that he's not loving,
Mm-hmm.
I think that struck a nerve with him. That they call him the child without love. It's like he was there to bury his mom. How is this kid not loving?
Right.
He's doing the right thing. He's obeying his mom's wishes, and it's like you see him doing this, and you look at him and say, "Well, he's a kid without love." Like, really?
Mm.
Like that really resonated with him to the point where he wanted to destroy the entire surface world.
Right.
Which also is in a side note, we got to be careful how we talk and label people because it affects people.
Hmm.
You know, he saw this young, impressionable boy and just off rip just say, "You're not loving." Look at the results of that. You know, so we have to be careful of how we talk and how we label. Well, we shouldn't label anyone, especially the young,
Right.
because when you say certain things to young people, it doesn't go away. It stays and it becomes a part of who they become.
Hmm.
And that's what happened with Namor.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But that's a side little thing. But you know,
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree, man. Very good points. And I like how they played on the whole amor, namor. They
right,
they played on that language because, of course, in the comic, that's not what his name means. But
right.
I
It's a good
love that
flip.
they did that. It was a good
It was a
flip.
good flip. Yeah.
Um, Chris, uh, standout scene in the film, something that stood out to you.
The demotion of Okoye.
Oh,
Like
that's
That's a
a
good one.
when
good
That's a
when
one.
good one. That's a good one. That's a good one.
That's a
because like
dope one.
she clearly was sitting on some stuff for a minute there.
Hmm.
And so and just the way it played out, you know, she kind of like she hinted at it at the beginning, and all that little bit of interplay with Shuri. So you know, Shuri is constantly pressing the envelope with the relationship with her mom, and her mom is like, you know, trying to maintain a healthy relationship with her adult child with boundaries.
Hmm.
And Okoye, you know, just like she messed up. She was like, "Hey, why don't you let her come with me?" And in her mind, she's thinking like, you know, she grieving, she needs the distraction. Let me get her out of here and get her something new. Whereas Ramonda is like my world's falling apart. This dude just came out of nowhere. Last thing I need is to lose my other child. I don't think she could go. But then when Sherry pushed back, like, hey, yeah, let me get out of here. You know, she was kind of forced into this situation. And so when things went awry and Okoye comes back and is like, hey, why don't you let me, you know, get myself together, go get her. She like, I'm done with you. I'm done.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I just thought that when she cut loose on the Okoye and demoted her, you felt that. It felt so real. Like, man, she been mad at her for some time, sitting on some of this stuff,
Hmm.
and it just boiled over. So yeah, I thought that scene was very powerful.
You know, out of all the scenes, that was an excellent scene. I think that was probably the most crazy enough out of this entire film. Although there were many emotional scenes, that one I felt from Okoye's perspective, because she was like, "I gave everything. No, no, please." And it was this. It was the first time that you saw Okoye weak, because every time her character's on screen, she's dominant, she's strong, she's fearless. But when it was about her position being stripped from her and she was no longer the general of the Dora Milaje, you saw her turn to a little girl. And that was a very impressive, that was very good acting on her part as well, because you could see it in her eyes that she acted that scene very well. She looked like she was distraught. So that was a really good one, Chris. Good pull. Nate, did I ask you already a scene that stood out to you?
No, no, not
Oh,
yet. You hearing
yeah,
me?
yeah, you sound perfect,
Am I
clear.
here? Hopefully, I'm here. I think I'm a little late.
It's okay. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So, the the problem whenever we do one of these reviews is that when it just came out is I forget a lot because I can only watch it once unless I pay for another ticket. But I think one scene that sticks out for me is maybe the in the beginning when they had the funeral
Mm,
procession, I guess you could call it. It was, I mean, for one, it was just beautifully shot and edited, directed, whatever. But I think that to me about that, at least one thing was that I didn't I wasn't really sure what to expect from this film, because I didn't watch any trailers because I want to go into this
mm,
as blind as possible. Obviously, I know they had to deal with how they deal with you get exiting T'Challa's character and things like that. But I think what struck me was that in a way this movie, well, the funeral itself, it was a funeral for T'Challa, but it was a funeral kind of also for, I think, the audience who had been following
Mm-hmm.
Chadwick Boseman. Thought that was an interesting kind of way of allowing the audience to kind of be part of what was happening with the characters, and kind of giving them a chance to mourn. And so I think that was just interesting to me, because you deal with this very significant loss, and you're not, they weren't able to do it in a way where they could um, obviously just give the character, his a sort of a final story. And I'm sure I've seen some people who were kind of didn't like the way they just sort of um, I think made him, introduce the fact that he was sick, and then had him
Mm-hmm.
die, and kind of just dealt with it. But I think that, I don't know, there's so many, I mean, I don't know how else you could deal with it. Just I think it was significant the way they did have that, and kind of gave the audience a chance to kind of deal with it. Um and you I think that just the way it ended with I think with Shuri doing the the ritual that her mom wanted to do, with the burning the I think the what
Mm-hmm.
is it, the mourning robes or something like that, the at the end of the beach. And they just kind of end it with her, and she's been dealing with all this stuff, and then they sort of in a way, that was the kind of the end of the mourning process, or the funeral, or at least her dealing with it. And you can kind of uh they go into, you can kind of see her sort of accepting it. And I think that sort of bookend with the beginning at the end was really beautifully done. And that's why, like, I was literally trying not to cry, because I was just, it felt silly to be crying in the theater for this. I'm sure there were other people that were, uh but yeah, it was just that moving. And so I think all of that, just dealing with the scenes, really dealing with um the grief, the thing, and the end, and of all that. I think that's what really stuck out to
Cool,
me.
cool. Thank you, thank you. Michelle, did I ask you already, or does what your standout scene?
Well, Chris and Nate stole my scene. So my other scene would be when they recast T'Challa, because now I know we have mutants. So now I can see T'Challa and Storm be married to each other like the comics. So that was
Ah.
probably my next favorite scene, when
Mm.
he was like, "I'm T'Challa," and I was like, "Yay, little baby, yes you are." Um, so just to see how um they are able to carry on T'Challa's story and still honor Chadwick, to me, was beautiful.
Yeah. And bringing up, since we're talking about that scene, um, I had a feeling it might go in that direction, just because they're trying to build up the Young Avengers. So I had this idea that perhaps, but when it happened, and he introduced his, I think Alfredo said the name earlier. What was his Haitian name?
Toussaint.
Tucson.
Tucson. And I was like, oh man, I wish he would have been called T'Challa. And then right when I had that thought, he was like, I heard you can keep secrets, when he was talking to Shuri. And he was like, my name is T'Challa, was son of King T'Challa. I was like, yeah. I thought that was dope. My wife loved that scene, by the way. My wife Michelle, she loved the film. She absolutely loved it. But that scene really got her, because she was very happy that the character was going to continue. I'm happy that we'll get a T'Challa eventually again. And so me personally, I would like that young kid to play him, because to me he had so much character to his face. Even when he was acting, he was doing it was simple lines, but he looked like he had some gravity when he said, I'm T'Challa, son of King T'Challa. And I hope I but the thing is, they'll probably have to age him up a whole bunch, and so might have to go into the future a little bit. But I hope he really gets to play the role, because I think he would be a really cool kid to play him. Okay, so let's see. I'll describe something else I thought was interesting in the film. When the film opened up, it opened up with the funeral procession, but it opened up with a prayer to Bast, Shuri. And of course, as Christians, we just got to dig in. Christians should not be praying to Bast, right? The Black Panther goddess. But also, we've been introduced to a new deity, Kul Khan. So we're definitely going to talk about him as well. But I wanted to maybe get some of your thoughts before we get into like Kul Khan and Bast and things like that. What are some Christian parallels or Christian themes or anything biblical or, because this is Real Reviews, we look at things from a Christian perspective. What is something that you think the audience should pay attention to as a Christian? I'm going to start with Chris Bryant Samuel. I'm going to give you that big one.
Yeah. One of the immediate things that stood out to me is that opening scene, which implied that Shuri was an atheist, and which they kind of doubled down on throughout the movie. It's like, okay, she really doesn't believe in Bast. And that was new. I didn't catch that in the first Black Panther. So for me, it was like, oh wow, this is kind of interesting. She prays, she goes in. The immediate news of things that they were over. The opportunity was gone, and then the burial. Get rid of all your technology. Let's go and do this ceremony. And she's there begrudgingly. And she's like resisting all this spiritualism. So for me, her story arc going from effectively an atheist to, a believer, even though it's not Christianity that it's talking about, I personally can suspend reality and treat Bast as though Bast is the Elohim that Yahweh has designated for the Wakandan people. So in the divine council, Bast doesn't bother me. But yeah, it was I truly appreciated that element of storytelling, because that is art imitates reality, and that's what resonates with people. And it resonated with me that there's a lot of people today that wrestle with Christianity, religion. I hesitate to use the word religion because I feel like there's some idiot out there that's gonna misinterpret what I'm implying with that. I'm talking about Christianity, but I'm speaking about it in a way that's slightly more general, just to describe it the way that it played out in the story. But yeah, I appreciated that story arc of her going from a young person who resists the traditions of her elders, considers themselves an atheist, as if they're smarter than everybody who preceded them, like Brady. And then by the end of the movie has this renewed spirituality, because her journey reveals to her that the afterlife is real and that she isn't this righteous person that she thinks she is. She's this person that has this misguided rage, and it's consuming her. So yeah, I appreciated that spiritual arc for her.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, remember when we talk about Real Reviews, it's about using what's in the film to kind of relate to people. So let's just say, and going along the same lines as Chris, let's just say there is an atheist in the world, and maybe he loves the movie Black Panther. And then so Chris could then use that scene in Black Panther to start and begin a very good conversation with the individual about transitioning from not believing in the supernatural to believing in supernatural things. And then, of course, ultimately arriving, of course, of scriptures as to Yahweh, not Bast, of course, but to Yahweh. Alfredo, man, any Christian parallels, anything you can use in the film, anything stand out to you?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, right, for we've definitely seen some of our more legalistic brethren uh go at the movie because of its, the African religions and the paganism. But funny enough, the film is actually about her not being spiritual at all. Okay?
Right.
Like, she rejects the supernatural world for science. And, she figures out that, you can have both. And as believers, right? We can have both. We can believe in the supernatural as Christians, but also be, critical thinkers
Right.
at the same time. Um, the biggest spiritual parallel though is when she goes into the ancestral realm and she sees Killmonger,
Mm.
right? And she's confused. She doesn't know why she's seeing him, and he's like, "You're not confused. Like you chose me." And it reminded me a lot of, when you are tempted to really be wicked and rebel against God, Satan will show up to give you that nice nudge.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Of course, the devil can't make us do anything. It's our decision. We have free will. But when we start, going down that path, he will show up to kind of assist you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's kind of what he was doing with her. Is like, basically come join the dark side. You want to be a Sith Lord like me. Stop fronting,
Right.
you know. And she does give in to a lot of the darkness to the last minute. You know what I mean? So I think that's something that we could take away as believers. Like when we are tempted to rebel, you know, Satan will find ways to help us in our rebellion. So that's my takeaway.
That's a very good one. So for me, I was elbowing my wife because me and my wife were having this discussion about who's going to be the next Black Panther, and of course I'm throwing out like a bunch of cool theories, right? Not that they're going to be fulfilled. And one of my theories, now everybody might hate it, but one of my theories was, what if Michael B. Jordan's character comes back and has a redemption arc and he becomes the new Black Panther? My wife was like, "No, that sucks. No." And so when he came on the scene, I was, because at first I thought, of course, it was going to be Ramonda on the throne, because that's where we saw her at her most powerful, right? And she died at the throne room when she drowned. And so, as the camera's panning, I'm like, "Oh, this is interesting." And then it's Killmonger. I was like, and I elbowed my wife. She was like, "Stop," But it was interesting to me, and I like the parallel that you drew, Alfredo, when it came to, he was, in that sense, he was Satan, he was the enemy, he was the Satan, right? He was the one coming and deceiving her. Yes, give in. You're just like me. Why are you trying to act different? Why you saw I'm the one that brought this. I'm the one that brought that. I'm the one that did this. And it was this whole moral conundrum she was in. And so, yeah, I like the fact that you brought that up. Very, very cool point. Michelle, any biblical parallels that maybe the audience should kind of pay attention to that maybe you saw in the film?
Again, Angela Bassett. Like even under pressure, like seriously under pressure, even with losing so much, she still held it together pretty well,
Mhm.
because I don't think I would have held it together as well as she did with all the loss and stuff that she had. So I would say just knowing that um, our strength is not necessarily come from ourselves when
Mhm.
we have very hard and difficult times. Um, and just to be able to know that um that you can have some kind of hope in something. And I just like to see, like, even with Shuri been gone, her still having that faith that she was going to get Shuri back, and still, just believing and holding on to that hope. I just thought that was it went to her character as far as her being a noble person.
Mhm.
And you could see, like, Shuri in the end remembering the nobility of her mom and not killing Namor, and at the end of that, because she could have. And she quoted um T'Challa when he was fighting in Baku, and she was like, "Yield for your people, like your people need you." And
Mhm.
so we see, like, all that anger and rage, and then we see her remember the um examples that she had before her, people who were willing to sacrifice and people who were willing to forgive and be kind to those who even hated them. And so she did that with him. So you see, like, her looking to people. So our witness, like how we are looked upon by other people, is important. How we act in front of people is important. because you don't know what aspect of your life is going to affect someone negatively or positively. And so T'Challa and her mom were good role models for her to, at the end, when she could have just killed him and moved on, and she didn't. So I just think we have, as Christians, we have to know, a, forgiveness is not just for um the person, it's also for us, the same way that we'll forgive others, the way we'll be forgiven. And two, we have to be very cautious um of our sanctification, and we
Mm-hmm.
have to be very mindful when it comes to our sanctification of how we look to other people as well.
Very good point. Thank you. Thank you. Nate, any biblical parallels, anything that you could probably use in the film to even talk about Christianity? Anything stand out to you at all?
I think probably everything has been said
Mm.
that I can remember. I was trying to think about the scene just before it was introduced when Shuri and her mother were um, were together, and they were trying to uh, do that ritual. And I forget, the queen said something, and Shuri was sort of, she said something like I think she disputed what her mother's experience was
A
and said like
construct
it's a
of her mind.
construct, something
Yeah.
like that. And I'm trying to remember
Yeah, Ramonda said
yeah,
that
and so
T'Challa
that
came
did
to
stick in my
her
mind.
and spoke to her, and Cherie was saying, "No, that was just your mind playing tricks on you."
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So, and I think, yeah, it sort of, and because you're when you guys were talking about sort of Shuri's journey, is how she was kind of an atheist, and I think that sort of that stuck out to me too. Just sort of like the spiritual versus the I guess maybe scientific, or
Mm-hmm.
technological things, that it seems more grounded in the physical world. And so that uh I wish I could go back and rewatch that scene. I felt like there was something about that that sort of reminded me of just what we deal with in apologetics. And I think what was already kind of said, that there isn't this disconnects between science and faith, science and the spiritual, that they can be that they can work together, and both be true. Um, and so I'll just say is that I think that's something that's worthy of maybe rewatching that scene. And I think just what Michelle was sort of saying at the end with Shuri sparing more. What's funny is I didn't realize that, because I think she was about to kill him, and I think she hears her mother saying like show them who you are,
Mm-hmm.
which that was actually in the first film too when I rewatched it. And I think that's something that I think we as Christians forget, that we need to act out who we are in Christ. And I understand it when we're angry, when people um are doing things against you that are unjust. It is so easy to follow that instinct to seek revenge or retribution. And I felt that a lot. It's when you just how dare you treat me this way. I'm gonna show you how I feel. And then you think, well, who am I in Christ? How am I supposed to reflect uh the new man that's in Christ, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's sort of what kind of stuck in my mind. Is like, well, who am I really in Christ? Not the old man, but the new man. And we need to show people who we are, and not even just in cases of when we're facing injustice, but we need to show people. um I think we forget, like, people who are in need, or people who are in need of love or compassion, and we kind of get stuck in our own comfort. And I think, well, it's like how it's just funny how we can just turn a blind eye to that. Or I was bringing this up in Bible study the other week, where it's so easy when you're driving and you're getting off the off ramp, you see a panhandler there. It's easy to just try to pretend like you don't
Mm-hmm.
see them. But is that who I'm in Christ, or can I show them that they exist, that they are loved, acknowledged, because that's who I should be showing who I am in Christ, by at least, even if I don't have cash, that I can say that you're loved and you're seen, and you're not invisible. And I think sometimes I forget to do that. And I think um, I think Shuri sort of, that you can kind of see a parallel in Shuri, example of, I guess, who she's supposed to be as, I guess, the new Black Panther, the new queen, and this person who's supposed to show mercy. And I think I think it's an example of, I mean, in a way, the mother speaking to her could be like the Holy Spirit speaking to us. Not that she's, the Holy Spirit, but also I think, we can realize that just the things that we say to people, it sticks with. We should speak the truth, and even realize that when we're not here or we're not with them, that there's a legacy or there's an impact to what we say, that they can be reminded of. And maybe God's going to remind them of that, to remind you, this is who you are. So we shouldn't underestimate the power of what the impact that we can have on other people, whether it's as parents or as as friends or as a brother or sister, because it can make a difference in the moment.
Very good points, man. Great job. Revelator, he says, the showing of grief, how the loss turned into bitterness, and it ate away at the soul. Only learning to not give over to the bitterness was redemption found. Very good. Lane Boo says, I liked that the queen went to her quote unquote faith to find comfort in her grief. It did show her versus Shuri, where she found no comfort. Now, of course, this is where I would have a conversation with somebody who's an unbeliever, and of course, I will bring the scriptures to the forefront and saying, you have your way of dealing with things, but your way of dealing with things is never ever going to bring you any healing, no ultimate redemption. You're always going to feel this way, but there is a way to feel at peace, and that is in Christ. And then I would start having that conversation with people like that. And of course, you can use this film and you would say something to the effect of, hey, remember that scene between Shuri and her mom when they were at the beach? You're kind of, and just using these stories to kind of impact people, because most people may not have read the scriptures, but they watched Wakanda Forever, right? So now you can start connecting and using things from the film. CMB, he says, Shuri seemed to disregard the supernatural, but even the fact that she recognizes vibranium isn't from Earth should at least point her to some sort of divine providence. You know what? When you said that, one of the things I thought about is how the Lord says that, he can be known by creation itself. And the fact that this vibranium pointed to some outside intervening power of some sort that came from outside of their world, I would point to Christ using creation, the trees, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all of that to point to an ultimate creator. And that's how I would probably try to connect it. There's one thing there's a couple of things I want to talk about. And I want to get your thoughts on this, everybody. One of the most haunting but beautiful sequences was when the Talokan people appeared, like at first appeared from the darkness, and they started singing the songs, and it started luring the people off the boat, and they started committing suicide. I'm like, whoa. And immediately the first thing I thought was the Odyssey, right? The sirens that would lead the people away. And so one of the things that I would use in that construct, as the way they did that, was the world is always calling you. There's always distractions in the world, right? And what ends up happening is if you just give over to it, it will lead you to your death. But if you go into the story of the Odyssey, the way that these individuals avoided the sirens crashing them was they tied themselves to a post on the ship. They tied themselves to the boat so that even in their weakness of trying to give over to the sirens, they couldn't, because they were anchored. And so what I would tell people is think about tying yourself to Christ and anchoring yourself in him so that even in your weakest moments, he holds you down and keeps you, because he's your anchor. He's your rooting, your root, your point of standing fast. And so that to me, but just from a film perspective, I thought that was awesome. The way they were luring the people away with song, and it totally hypnotized them. I thought that was a creative touch to add to the Talokan people. I don't know what you guys think about that scene, or is there something else you want to talk about in the movie? And this is where we go for the free for all. What did you guys think about that scene, about the Talokan people kind of having the power to pull people away?
So you telling me you like Marine spirits, SOC?
The what?
The Marine spirits.
Yeah, I thought it was dope. I thought it was a dope scene.
There's Christians who think that there's Marine spirits.
Oh no.
And that's what I actually thought of. That's what I actually thought of. I was like, they're gonna have a field day with this one. Like, look at the Marine spirits. They're trying to take your spirit spouses, the Taluka people. No, I really I thought that was pretty dope. Like listening to Alfredo has a video called, I think it's The Song of the Sea. Mm-hmm. And actually that's even though that's not what he's talking about, right. That's actually what I thought of when they start doing that. I thought Alfredo's video title. But no, I thought that was pretty sweet how they were able to do that, and how melodic it sounded to people, like to the point where you're hypnotized and you are willing to kill yourself. And it makes me think about false doctrine and cults, that we can become so hypnotized and so entrenched in those false doctrines that we're willing to go against our own best interests just to satisfy those cults. So that's kind of like what I thought of when they were doing that and watching the people just like jump off to their own deaths.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, did you notice that scene in the film as far as like connecting it to the Odyssey? I would think somebody as well read as you.
Of course. I mean, it was one of the things that I thought, again, on the whole, I thought that the film told a story very well, and it was like little detailed elements like that really added to the added to the enjoyment of the film. It wasn't just this very, like most Marvel films are, they get by off of the comedy. They get by off of these like really low hanging, almost situational comedy jokes. And there might have been like one or two in this whole film, which is odd for a Marvel film to have so few. And in lieu of them, it's this great story with these little, tidbits like the chanting, the contrast of the Talokan people as like basically all of them took the heart-shaped herb. So whereas Wakandans have the advantage of technology, they're above ground, and they've been tinkering with vibranium for a millennia, for over a millennia. I mean, over a century now. What's the future? It was like 500 years with the. No, it wasn't that long. It's only 100 and something years because it's only been 2 or 3 Black Panthers. But yeah, why the Wakandans have been tinkering with vibranium and making their society significant by that, and then they take that heart-shaped herb and they only give it to their Black Panther, their icon. The Talokan people gave it to everybody,
right?
And it was just like it was the fact that like you beat the crap out of them and they fall down, and then next thing you know, they're getting back up. It's like, did I just shoot you? I know I just shot you. I know I just stabbed you. And these guys are just getting back up. They were so durable. Those water bombs.
Oh, they were dope.
Like to think about it, like you're underwater, and like when he's about to take Shuri down to Talokan, he goes, hey, your blood's gonna turn to poison, and your body's just gonna be crushed by the pressure. Or we can use this suit, and you can go down there in this suit and you'll be fine. And you don't think about that, like the immense amount of pressure that's underwater, and it's like the reverse of what happens with us. We get, with fire in a bomb, it's like you make these compressed water bombs to where you can go up to Wakanda, the capital city of Wakanda, and blow, and it's flooding, it's water all over the place, and your superpowers are to some degree enhanced by the water.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I thought that there were a bunch of little things. The fact that Namor, said he's a mutant, and you can take it as if, oh, he's simply a mutant because he got pointy ears, or you can take it as he's a mutant.
Right.
So yeah, I thought there were a lot of just little bitty nuanced things that made this story much more enjoyable. Again, the only part I really didn't like was I felt like Dominique Thorne did an excellent job as an actress. I felt like the scenes that she had, she even stole that one scene where Okoye and Shuri comes to get her from MIT.
Oh yeah,
she's kind of stole that scene. She kind of walking around campus bossing it up, and then when they come into her room to try to convince her to come, oh, y'all here to recruit me? I thought her acting was like really good. Right. It was just like, why in the world, in the most technologically advanced place on earth, are we letting a dumpster diver build something and displaying it? Like, go put that in the trash. Like, give me some more vibranium. And it was like, just give the girl some vibranium. She's smart. Just give her some vibranium. It'll work itself out. So yeah, those are some of the things that kind of made the movie enjoyable for me. And then that one thing, it was just like, man, they could have saved Riri Williams' story for another movie and chopped 10 minutes off of this movie, and or spent that 10 minutes on some other plot development element. Not that it was lacking any. I felt like, hey, I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. She did still scene. I mean, of course, my wife and I laughed at the scene when she said, you got that little ashy head to Okoye, and everybody in the theater started cracking up. I thought it was hilarious. So there are a couple of things I want to talk about. Let me bring it up on this right here. So one of the things is I want to talk a little bit about Cool Khan and some of the games. That they had. So let me get the information straight first of all. Okay, so who did he represent? Is it based in anything historical? Well, actually, the Feather Serpent God wasn't just a creation of Ryan Coogler. He pulled from some information. So Kukul Khan, also spelled that right there, plumed serpent, amazing serpent, is the name of a Mesoamerican serpent deity that was worshipped by the Yucatec Maya people of the Yucatan Peninsula before the Spanish conquest of Yucatan. The depiction of the feathered serpent is present in other cultures of Mesoamerica. Kukulkan is closely related to the deity of Cuauhtémoc of the Quiche people and to the Quetzalcoatl of Aztec mythology. Little is known of the mythology of this pre-Columbian era deity. Although heavily Mexicanized, Kukulkan has his origins among the Maya of the classic period. In Yucatan, references to the deity Kukulkan are confused by references to a named individual who bore the name of the god. Now, because of this, the distinction between the two has become blurred. This individual appears to have been a ruler or priest of Chichen Itza, who first appeared around the 10th century. So I just wanted to give everybody a kind of introduction to the fact that they actually pulled from a pagan deity, a pagan god of the Maya people. And I thought it was interesting. I thought it was an interesting twist to Namor's character. I know everybody was just, when you first introduced Namor, who is one of the original mutants, original comic book characters, and has a foundation in Atlantis, to change him so severely and pull from these pagan ideas of the Mesoamerican people, I thought was interesting. I thought it was perfect for this film, for Black Panther. I thought it would have been, and I think the director and the MCU decided to take this spin because it would make Namor different from Aquaman in the DCU, because Aquaman's already, the king of Atlantis, so forth and so on. So just to make that carbon copy and just say, oh no, it's Namor, this is our Aquaman, I thought was a very smart move to switch him completely and actually pull from, a cultural perspective. As far as that character goes, I also want to talk about something else that I noticed in the film. And it was, of course, during one of my favorite scenes when Namor is introducing Talokan to Shuri. You see that the people were actually playing a sport underwater. And the sport is called a Maya ball game, originated more than 3,000 years ago. Now, through this ball game, a conflict of the forces of darkness and light is described and enacted. By tradition, the twin brothers Hunafu and Balank, I believe I pronounced it okay, used their time on Earth to play ball. Through the noise of the game, aroused the anger of Vukub came the master of the underworld. A fight ensued, which resulted in the formation of the game. After the game, one of the brothers was decapitated, and his head was used as the game ball. Now, from the decapitated trunk of the player, blood escaped in the form of snakes. Now, this blood was taken as a symbol of fertility. Now, the Maya ball game was more than just an athletic event. It was also a religious event of regeneration that Maya saw as integral to their continued existence. The Mayas showed devotion to their gods by playing the game and by sacrifices. Now, of course, scholars debate about who was subject to ritual killing at ball games and how frequently. So, although it was shown as this beautiful underworld, oh, look at these people, there were symbolisms. There were things that I would point out to Christians to be aware of, that the sports in that Maya community had symbolic meaning. I thought it was a nice touch that they put that there to kind of hang in and show the genuineness of them pulling from the culture. So them playing the sport underwater, I thought was very interesting, very good to put in there. I know some people may be uncomfortable with the fact that the film shows these things, but I think it's important. Now, I don't think the film is telling you go worship Bast, go worship Kukul Khan. In fact, I believe what's being shown is that this is where cultures, or this is how cultures behaved. It'll be similar to me if I decided to make a Bible movie and I would actually display some of the abominations of the Canaanites. I'm not telling you to go worship the Canaanites. What I'm showing you is what they did. And this would be a great opportunity for us, again, to minister to individuals and show a lot of these things to people and say, hey, man, what you're watching has meaning. So be careful with what you watch as a Christian. Be aware and be able to use this information that's in the film as a way to kind of communicate with the world that is not Christian or with the secular world in general. Lane Boo also says that she saw the sport in El Dorado. That's the animated film. So they did show it in there as well. So when it comes to those things, Chris, I'm actually interested in your thoughts about the Mayan community and everything that was done in the film. Or is there something I missed that maybe you can pull or talk about?
I saw it in Harry Potter too. No, that's a joke. And Quidditch.
Oh my goodness.
You know what? To my shame, like I know a little bit about Mayan culture. By the grace of God, I've visited the Yucatan Peninsula. I've visited a few different places in both Mexico as well as Central America, where they had Aztec pyramids. And I've actually walked in a few, like literally walked in some like 1,000-year-old buildings, 1,000-year-old building. So yeah, but I don't know, like off the dome, like that's not my strong suit,
right.
Familiarity with the Aztec culture. So it's something I need to spend a little more time looking into. I know some basic stuff that, some prophecies that they put out there, and when the time period passes, like, hey, well, that one, there goes another one.
Oh, like the Mayan calendar.
I'm not super familiar with them. Yeah, exactly, like the Mayan calendar and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there were some things that I knew. I was semi-knowledgeable about the game that was being played. I remember in history, to some extent, talking about that game and how, it was tied to idolatry in some sense. I thought it was interesting that they placed it in the film. Again, I don't know everything about everything, but it was just interesting. And the reason why I kind of pointed that out was because I do want people to be aware of the films that they're watching. There are things in there that you should be knowledgeable of, and not just kind of do whatever it is that you see in a movie. So, for example, like if I walk around, yelling, "I'm Cool Khan," and I don't know what that means, basically you're saying that you're a serpent deity, a serpent god. And so that's kind of stuff you need to pay attention to. Or, the fact that, Bast, in the film. These are things that I think as Christians we should be aware of, we should talk about, we should expose, and then also at the same time be able to understand that this film is not a Christian film. They're not trying to push Christian ideals. So we shouldn't be shocked when they do things opposite of Christianity. But as Christians, in the same way that the Apostle Paul in Acts 17 uses a poem talking about Zeus in order to gain either the confidence or gain the ear of the people listening, it is okay for us to use films like this to start and begin conversations in order to push Christianity, or more importantly, Yahweh and Christ, and be image bearers of Him in that sense, taking and kind of twisting their own ideologies and then using them as conversation starters for Yahweh. Okay, I'm going to talk about something I didn't like in the film. I may become a supervillain right now. I hated the final fight scene. I did not. Here is why. It's not that the scene wasn't entertaining, and it's not that Shuri was Black Panther. What I did not like is all of a sudden Namor became weak. I didn't like that. I mean, if you think about I know he was pulled away from the water, but they fought right next to a beach. It's not like, that the few seconds he could have ran and jumped in the water, got, powered back up and fought her and beat her up. I think that I know they had to some degree to kind of weaken him, but I wish I would have seen him fight like at full power, full strength, and actually won the battle to some extent, and maybe had a crisis of conscience on his own. Because to me, I felt like Namor was established as this powerful character. They even said in the film that when he's in water or he's surrounded by water, he's as strong as the Hulk and as strong as Thor. And when M'Baku tried to hit him and he put his hand up and broke it, and then that scene, I have to say, that scene was absolutely amazing. I felt the punch. When he punched M'Baku in the chest and broke, and the fact that they slowed it down and showed the pieces of his armor break, I was like, yes. I also thought that the film, I thought that the winged feet were going to be kind of corny at first because I'm like, wings on his ankles. But the way they used it in the film, absolute genius. The fact that he was able to turn in midair, cut on a dime, tear up the planes and the jets and things like that. I thought that was so well done, and they totally sold me on it. But yeah, the last fight scene, and I invite anybody to just have a different opinion on the scene if they did. I just thought that they reduced him, and I didn't like it because I wanted him to be established as very powerful, and I just felt like that scene kind of weakened him to some degree. But anyway, that's the one thing I didn't like about the film. I mean, there are other little plot holes, but it's not a big deal for me. I don't look for perfect films. I just look for really good ones and something I enjoy. But Nate, Michelle, or Chris, any thoughts on the final fight scene? Anything about Namor? Let's kind of wrap it up and just kind of give us your final thoughts, things you like, things you didn't like, all that good stuff. I'll pick on Chris. Chris, you go first.
Yeah, I thought it worked well. I thought that fight scene worked well. Okay, so her and Riri figured out that Namor must draw his additional power up level from moisture, and so they stuck him in the jet and put him in the microwave to dry him out. And so to me, it's like, well, when a person's that OP, you either have to find somebody else that's got that type of power to level the playing field, or you have to weaken them. And, that's his kryptonite, heat. You gotta dry them out a little bit. And to me, it's like, in spite of the fact that she dried him out, he still won. He plunged that what's his name,
The
right into
spear.
her stomach. That spear right into her stomach. He still won. Even powered down, he technically still won the fight. The thing was, when after he did that, he thought it was over and he was going to, re-up, get some water in him. She gutted it out. She pulled it out, and she triggered the jet thing from the actual ship that they had, destroyed. He destroyed with his spear,
Right.
and then that dried him out even more, and that gave her the advantage for the 1 second for them to, broker their little peace treaty. So, I didn't feel like that hurt the movie. I felt like the final fight scene was fine. It would have been absurd to have a brand new Black Panther, someone who we've seen fight very little other than with her little, post blasters, all of a sudden take the heart-shaped herb and put on this suit and beat a guy who for 500 years been the man.
But that's
So
what I
yeah,
felt like they did. Like, I mean, I know, yeah, they had to depower him to some degree in order for that fight to happen. But maybe it's just me being picky. It's not a bad scene. It's not like terrible. It's not like, oh, the movie sucks now just because of that. It was just one of those nitpicks where I just felt like if I would have wrote it, I'll put it this way. If I would have wrote it, I would have had him have a crisis of conscience and stop before he beat her to death. And then maybe, because to me, he has to carry on as this powerful character in other films. And I felt like she kind of beat him a little easy. But that's just my opinion. So I definitely respect your ideas and thoughts about it, and I see what you're saying as well.
But that's like you're a Christian and you want him to just be a good guy out of nowhere. This man has been, he has embodied the child with no love his whole life. And then you think 500 years later, he's going to be like, you know what? Let me change my mind because she cute. He wasn't going to do that.
No.
I
I'm
think
not saying that because
well,
because in
they
that
was
he did have.
they was vibing that though.
he did
They
like
was
her,
they
but
was
that
certainly
wasn't.
vibing that he was like he was into Shuri.
Yeah,
He
he
was into
did give
Shuri.
her his mama's bracelet.
Oh,
That
well,
is a
that's
big
true.
thing.
He did. But like to me,
But
it would have been because it ended up the exact same way. All of a sudden, he still had this crisis of conscience. It was just from her perspective. It was like she beat him and she had mercy on him. All I'm saying is I wish it would have been reversed because I felt like he would have still maintained his power. But
he
maybe
did though. He was being dried out and he still destroyed this ship, beat Shuri down. Like, and I'm with Chris. It was really only because he started walking away because he thought he had her, because he beat her down and destroyed the ship while being dried out. And that's what really, to me, it actually shows how powerful he actually is.
good point.
That even though they figured out how to beat him, and with him drying out and you can see him weakening, he still was so powerful and so strong that he still was able to destroy a ship, a Wakandan ship, not an American ship, not a Japanese ship. He destroyed a Wakandan ship. That's how strong this. He destroyed the vibranium
Not a
Wakandan ship.
colonizer ship. It was
No, that's what I'm saying. Like he destroyed a vibranium Wakandan ship while being dried out. And knowing that's his weakness, that to me showed how powerful he actually was. And because they were in the desert when they landed, so he's still drying out, just not at the same rate he was.
in the
So he was
desert,
still
5 feet
drying
from the
out.
beach, from
But
the
he
ocean.
but he wasn't. But so here's the thing: he knows that Shuri was strong enough to where if he just tried to run to get water to power up real quick, Shuri was going to jump and fight him and stop him from getting that water. So it still would not have benefited him. I think he was very strategic in what he was doing. And I think if he would have tried to take the route to run to the beach to power up real quick, it's like people who own guns. When you take classes, they tell you don't let your gun be a distraction if something is happening. If you can do something without letting your gun be a distraction, do that first.
Mhm.
And because if you have a weapon, your first thought is, let me grab my weapon if I'm in this instance. Don't let that be your first thought, because it could distract you from making better choices without having to grab it. And I think he was thinking that if I run to this water, Shuri is still the Black Panther. He knows how this works because they have their own version of the heart shaped herb. He knows how this works. He knows Shuri is angry. He knows that she has declared war on him, knowing how strong and powerful he is, and she has declared war on him. So he knows that she is fighting out of pure anger and vengeance.
Hmm.
He was smart enough to not try to take that, because I think if he'd have did that, Shuri would have ran from behind and clapped him that way. And then it would have been worse on him that he tried to run the water and Shuri now stabbed him in the back. I think again, he destroyed a vibranium Wakandan ship being dried out. That to me, it made me pause like, yo, how how strong is this dude?
He's mad
Instead of,
strong.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I think it did show how strong he is and how he still was able to fight somebody who has the strength of the Black Panther, because the Black Panther is very very strong, like super strong.
Hmm.
And I think for him to still beat somebody who has the strength of the Black Panther and destroy vibranium, I think he just that to me shows that not only is he, and then how he was talking to Namora when they were back at home, it shows to me that not only is he physically strong, and not only does he make what they say, don't play checkers, play chess,
Right.
that not only is he physically strong, he also plays chess and not checkers, which is why he hadn't already destroyed the surface world. And he realized what position she was in and how he can exploit this position that she's in. And so I think it shows that he's not only just physically strong, he's also mentally strong and in a much better position than even Shuri is, even with the strength of the Black Panther. I'll give it a 5 star. That's my rating.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention. I thought that Julia Louis-Dreyfus did a good job. Like normally you see her in comedy, situation comedy,
Right.
and she played a very serious role for this whole for all her in this movie, and it was like that was pretty solid. It was like it didn't feel awkward or out of place, and it was a good tether for the rest of the MCU to make this movie feel like it's a part of the MCU, because
Hmm.
there was no Winter Soldier, there was nobody else from any of the other Marvel Cinematic Universe in it. So,
Right.
and you didn't feel like you missed anything in spite of that. So, yeah.
So what is your final rating or final thoughts on the film?
Yeah, I always give it 2. Remember, okay, so I would give it I give it an A minus, and the minus is largely because they just shoved the character in that they just didn't need to shove in there, even though that just to me was just like I didn't need that. And then I would give it a probably like a 4.5 stars. It's not a perfect movie. It's a solid. It's a really good movie. It was a good movie that I can watch again, and I think I'll enjoy it watching it again without I won't have any regrets. So yeah, and it's a long movie, so that's not always the case.
Right. Right.
So
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. Nate, any final thoughts on the film, and what's your rating?
My rating probably 4.25, 4.5. I think it. I I feel like one in particular in Phase Four would be one where I will enjoy it a lot more once I watch it again. I can feel that because I kind of know where it's going, so I can just sort of appreciate the story. I did want to kind of touch on which you were talking about in the final battle. I think the way it went down did I think make sense for Shuri's arc
Hmm.
because one it showed that she obviously she doesn't have the fighting skills that T'Challa had. She wasn't being raised to be the Black Panther, so she used her technological or her science to kind of take him down for at least in part. I think that makes sense, and I think it was important for her also to win with her character. In other words, showing her mercy. I think that was important also for the art because um, that led into didn't just beat Namor. She basically that's what won the entire battle,
Mhm.
right? Because he came back and said, okay, we're having a truce. So I think that kind of made sense for that arc as well. Otherwise, if he had just died, I mean, maybe his people would have continued fighting. And so I think it's important to show kind of who she was. That again, show them who you are, right? And I think it
Right.
was important for her to win by showing them who she was. Um, and so I think that was, and that's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of things that parallel, I think, T'Challa's story in a way. I mean, he
Mhm.
had his first story. Really, we see him in Civil War, and he gets to is it Zemo at the very end?
Mhm.
He was saying, they are consumed by vengeance. I'm not
Very
letting
good.
them
Very
sleep,
good
right?
pull. Yeah.
That's Shuri's. That's basically Shuri's arc too. So her arc, I mean, I think there was a lot of parallels with T'Challa's arc that
Mhm.
I could see, and so I think that was important too. Um, so yeah, I agree with everyone else that you were wrong about the final fight. It was how it needed to be, but no, I think it was a good film. Again, there were parts where I was, it was okay. I wasn't resonating with it, or it wasn't like it wasn't bad or anything. I didn't there wasn't any parts that I disliked or felt necessarily was wrong.
Mhm.
I think there were just moments where like, okay, this is just like a normal Marvel movie. um and some of them are just like the regular fights that you see. Some of them were good fights that you kind of get into. But I think it ended perfectly again with just Shuri by herself at first before the mid credit scene.
Mhm.
Just finally dealing with it. You can almost feel like there was this whole weight from the beginning to the end of the movie, and then now she's finally coming to terms with everything what's going on. You could almost I don't know, not necessarily relaxing, but actually maybe allowing herself to grieve. Uh, and then just to kind of tag on afterwards, kind of giving you a little bit of hope. When they introduced, the way they did it when they had is it Nakia say, you kind of have a feeling. She'll say, "This is my son." It's like, okay. We know that she was with T'Challa. We don't know like if
Right.
they were together at the end. You're like, okay, is it his son too? And she's like, "This
Yeah.
is your auntie." And you're like, "Oh, okay." And it's yeah, it, that I think that's the scene. I think that's what made me almost cry. Just the fact that he was named T'Challa, um and the fact that I mean, really, you think about it. She lost her father. She lost her brother. She lost her mother in this film. I think this is, as far as we know, her only family left. And so we took everything away from her, but gave her a little bit of hope in this person. And that was such a beautiful moment. And so I think that's ending it the way they did kind of, it probably redeemed anything that was
Mhm.
lacking in the film for me. It made me those are the moments that I loved. And so I do look forward to watching this again when it comes out again on Disney Plus, and looking forward to eventually owning it as well. But yeah, so yeah, that I think that's probably my final thoughts for about 4.5 maybe.
Okay, cool. For me, I bounced around at first just because there were some plot holes. I wasn't critical of the film in that way. I bounced at first. I was thinking 3.85, 4. I was bouncing around. I think I feel comfortable at a 4, because Namor should have beat her up at the end. I'm just kidding. But that wasn't that wasn't the determining factor for me. I just thought it would be cool to have something different. But it wasn't. It wasn't like it messed it up. It wasn't like, oh, that's the worst way they could have had that fight. No, I was just being picky and finding something that I was like, oh, maybe if they would have changed it this way, I would have been happier. Just because I know he's going to continue. But either way, I give it a good 4. I'm comfortable at a 4 for it. It wasn't perfect, but it was a really good film. I had a lot of fun watching it, especially watching it with my wife. My wife will give it a 5. My wife gave it she was like, oh, 5, because she loved the T'Challa scene, the young boy. I mean, just like how you were talking about, Nate. That was the scene that made it for her. We got T'Challa Jr. here, 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, those are all respectable scores. I respect everybody's thoughts on it. I thought it was really good. So this is the end of season 4 of Real Reviews. So I want to thank my whole panel for being here. Thank you guys for taking time out of your busy schedules and your day to join me for Real Reviews. And, for everybody out there, make sure you guys stay tuned for the next Real Reviews. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for joining us on the Real Reviews team. Make sure you watch season 4. We dealt with a lot of cultish things, but make sure you also pay attention to in the film, there was a cult of the Talokans. I was actually looking at some of the information on it, so that's something you could look into as well. So thank you all for being here. We have a big surprise in season 5. We won't tell you what it is. You'll just have to tune in and find out for yourself. We may be introducing something. And so make sure you guys tune in for season 5. I'm very excited. And it's going to be a pretty dope season. So with that said, I want to thank you all for being here. God bless. Take care. And I will see you on the next review. Peace.